This week on the WriterCon podcast.
I think the advice would be to put your butt in a chair and go to work every day. Don't consider it a hobby. If it's not a hobby for you, if you want it to be a career, then make it a career.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Lara Bernhardt, award-winning author of the Wantland Files book series.
Thank you, Jesse Ulrich. Hey there, writers. Thanks for joining us for this, the first episode in what I'm calling WriterCon Season 4. We have some surprises, some new features planned for this season, including a new segment for writers called Craft Corner. But your hosts happily will remain the same, me and my brilliant spouse, Lara, and our intrepid sound engineer, Jesse. Jesse, have you been enjoying it hasn't even been a month, but have you been enjoying your break since the last podcast before we launch into season 4?
Yes, it's been so great still going through all of the sessions from WriterCon to pull the recordings together, right. Which I'm still working on. I'm almost done. I'm getting there. It's taking a little longer, but yes, it's been good not to have to also have podcast production from you on top of all that.
That's great. Lara, we last heard from you during that live episode we did at WriterCon, which was a blast, that live recording with Kimberly and April Lynn. Have you recovered from the conference yet?
Recovered from, I still kind of have a warm glow going from the conference, I think. But my September just kind of disappeared like a puff of smoke. I can't believe we're in October already. So no, I'm still waiting for some downtime.
So time to bring out the Halloween decorations?
Yes.
Okay, tonight.
Sounds good.
We wanted, of course, a super special guest for this, our season launch. So I'm pleased to bring you a great friend of the podcast and of the WriterCon conference, and that would be New York Times-bestselling author Robert Dugoni. He was last with us in 2022, when he was keynote at WriterCon. He's been on the podcast twice before. He's got a new book out now, which is the second in his new legal thriller series featuring a female lawyer, Keera Duggan. The first in the series came out last year, Her Deadly Game. It received tremendous acclaim, sold fantastically, smash success, and now we've got a new one, the second in the series, Beyond Reasonable Doubt. We want to talk to Bob about that and so much more, but first, the news. First news story, book bars are gaining momentum. And by this, I'm talking about exactly what it sounds like, a bar or a cafe that serves drinks and offers a quiet, safe space where readers can come together and read. The idea, of course, is to create community and to get people away from their screens. But these book bars are really becoming popular, not only in New York City, but in other cities as well. The idea is to prioritize solo time with maybe a little low-key conversation, records. I can't read when music is playing, but I guess some people can. And the spaces are for reading, drinking, listening to music, chatting with other book lovers, or I'm going to guess ignoring them if you don't want to. There may be booze, books. Well, there will be books. There may be snacks, but I'm assuming high-class snacks like olives or tinned fish, something like that.
Definitely a charcuterie board at a place like this.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be a safe place, conducive to reading and chatting. Lara, it occurred to me while I was preparing this story, we've been to clubs or groups or gatherings or places that do almost the same thing for board games. You know, they've got a million games and you can come in and find somebody play a game again. We've been to gatherings for film lovers. We've been to places that are basically gathering places for cats and cat lovers.
Yes. No wine. We get cats
but never, but never a book bar. Do you see book bars taking off?
I hope so. I love this. I love this so much. It's like a library with wine. Look at that. Look at those walls and walls and walls of books. Yeah. And I get what you're saying about if you just wanted to read, you might not want the distractions. But if you were looking for something to do, a community to connect with, this to me seems ideal. If I was a person who was dating, which I'm not and don't ever expect to be, but I would never want to go to a bar. I wouldn't, but this makes my heart happy. I can absolutely see going someplace like that. And then you would find like-minded people who also love books.
Right. Well, Jesse, I always turn to you for the practical view because, of course, as I read this, I can't help but thinking, if you want to be left alone to read, shouldn't you just stay home and read? One of the things I think I always liked about reading was I don't have to go anywhere to do it, you know? What do you think? Would you go?
Not only would I go, I have gone, and I should have told you guys about this before you went to Iceland, but there's a book bar in Reykjavik, and we went, and it was great. Ironically enough, there was also like a live band while we were there, so that sort of took away from the reading aspect of it. But no, like if you want to go hang out with people and have a conversation, why not have a lot of books around so you can talk about your favorites, or in this case, try to find the most interesting looking Icelandic book that we couldn't actually read, but to look at. It was great. I hope these take off. There's no reason for them not to take off. Like, people will buy more books when they're drunk. So it works.
Except I would fall asleep on page 2, but I guess that doesn't matter. Why didn't you tell us about the one? And
I know, I'm sorry.
Now we're going to have to go back.
Yes, it was.
We did go to the Bobby Fischer Museum. That's about the nerdiest thing we did, but no book bar.
But next trip, I would like to go during puffin season, please.
So I was worried you were going to miss the puffins.
We got a fridge magnet. Isn't that good enough?
Got a fridge magnet, and I did see a puffin, but I'd like to see many puffins.
You'll go back during puffin season. I'll tell you about the book bar. It's great. I'll also tell you about the beer spa up north. It's a completely different topic, but also wonderful. So
sounds fun. Although we seem to have veered off topic, so let me drag in. Here's news story number 2,
like you would at a book bar. So
well, exactly. Right. So I would never. Oh, of course, how many times have we been surprised in recent years by what becomes popular? I couldn't have predicted romantasy either, or spicy romance or whatever. But now a new fad in the world of romance is the anti-billionaire romance. Because, I mean, you've read 50 Shades of Grey, a college student and this very young, incredibly attractive. Oh, come on. I know some people have read it. You don't want to admit it, but even I downloaded the sample and was really disappointed because, I kept reading and thinking, where's all the kinky sex? This is just like they're meeting and he's braiding her hair and stuff. But anyway, 50 Shades of Grey, all the fan fiction based on Harry Styles, which would include that and a lot of other stuff. Anyway, all of these books, and I think a lot of other books and Hallmark romances and whatnot, have featured billionaires. And now there seems to be a backlash against that. And people are writing clearly things billed as anti-billionaire romances, which offer, and this is a quote from Jackie Snow, a path to finding joy in the mundane and romanticizing the small domestic moments of life, something that feels like it's in reach for all of us, not just if you capture the attention of the 1%. So there's some economics and some politics. And I mean, it sort of makes sense. Well, I don't know. Does it make sense? Is it more romantic when the woman falls in love with the pauper because she doesn't care about money? Or is it more of a Cinderella type dream when she falls for the handsome and presumably wealthy prince? I don't know, but these books are very popular. Lara, have you read any anti-billionaire books?
I have.
Or I don't know what's on your iPad late at night. You could be reading all kinds of things.
Well, I have been reading paranormal romance, and I'll be honest, the men in that one, money is not an issue. They are vampires who've been around and are just have a mountain of money somewhere. I don't know. They have everything. Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued by this. I want to go find an anti-billionaire book. I like this idea. I like the idea of finding something sweet and romantic, because even in the books that I do read, I find myself more taken with the sweet gestures when they take her on a picnic or tell her why she's the perfect person for them or something. Those quiet, tender moments are what do it for me, not being swept away on something. So,
well, you're subtracting the sort of happy ending element that, you know, they're going to live in wealth, but perhaps making it more romantic if money isn't a factor. I don't know, Jesse, you possibly haven't read a billionaire or an anti-billionaire romance, but if you were going to choose one.
Yeah, of course I would choose the sort of Bernie Sanders romance of Book Against the 1%.
the socialist romance.
Sandermance?
Oh, that could catch on.
Yeah, trademarks.
Like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was thinking of like the incredible weird movie now musical Moulin Rouge, which is also a play on like, you know, who's she going to fall in love with, like the poor writer versus the rich aristocrat or whatever. Like it's a common... It's not surprising to me that there'd be a swerve back to that, and there'll probably be a swerve back to billionaires later on. Just, you know, so it's one of those things where people get their fill of one, want the other thing, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh no, I actually do want someone with money." I do wonder if it's an actual like a 6 month to a year sort of delayed reaction to the economic status of the countries in which these books are sold. And if people are more economically anxious, they want to read billionaire romance. If they're less anxious, they're like, no, I'll take a risk.
Yeah, well, if it's just finding a different way of being romantic, I could get that. But some of these stories are pretty clearly addressing class issues, you know, and they're either trying to redeem the billionaires, even though they're billionaires, or the characters are trying to take one down or fix an unjust system of capitalism or something like that.
This would be like a book about someone who's like deciding whether to fall in love with James Patterson or one of James Patterson's ghostwriters. I feel like that is.
I knew you'd get him in there. He's written romances.
Yeah.
Of course, he's written everything or put his name on it, one or the other. It seems so strange to me, but then I thought about it. If you go back to what I think, you could argue about it, but what I think is the progenitor of the whole romance genre, Jane Austen. Does Pride and Prejudice address class and social and money issues? Yeah, it's like all about them.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a lecture about them, but it's in the fabric of the character relationships and really every aspect of the story. Yeah. So maybe it's more of that. All right, enough of the news. We're launching a new feature in this episode. Brief bits of wisdom from experienced writers or people in the book world about various craft writing issues. We're going to call this Craft Corner. And who could possibly do the best one except my illustrious award-winning wife, author of 7 books, Lara Bernhardt. Let's go to Craft Corner.
Craft Corner.
Today on Craft Corner, I want to talk about conflict. I see a lot of manuscripts by newer authors who don't quite understand conflict doesn't have to be bombs. It doesn't have to be car chases. It doesn't have to be fist fights. It doesn't even have to be an argument. When we're writing novels, conflict refers to anything that keeps the protagonist from achieving the goal that they want. And so within the novel, you're going to have something keeping them from getting their overarching ultimate goal, but also as you're moving through chapter by chapter and scene by scene, you need to have little roadblocks along the way. And as they hurdle those and progress in their journey, you're also forwarding your plot. Mm-hmm. It's very important not to, if you're reading your story and you realize that it's kind of boring, it's not interesting anymore. If you, the author, find that to be boring, your reader is absolutely going to be bored with it. So another habit that I see a lot of is kind of injecting false conflict, something that feels very fabricated. And
we see that a lot at retreats and whatnot, don't you think? People who want to launch their manuscript with something big and exciting, which is a good instinct, at least for some kinds of books. But then they end up having bombs going off or car chases or torture scenes that don't really land because you don't know who these people are. You don't have time. Exactly, you don't care about them yet. It just seems kind of icky. And that's not the best way to create conflict, much less start a story, don't you think?
That's absolutely right. And sometimes on top of that, you have 2 or 3 pages of that and you are starting to get hooked and starting to get invested, and they wake up from a dream or everything grinds to a halt.
That would be the worst.
That is the worst. Everything grinds to a halt because suddenly you launch into backstory. Well, let me just explain what's going on here and all the stuff that led up to this.
Okay, I take it back. That would be the worst.
And I sadly have seen some stuff. So yes, you have the right idea that you're trying to launch it with something exciting, but you need that conflict to be organic. And Bill's exactly right. You need to give your reader a moment to become invested in the story and care about your protagonist. Give them something to fight for that reader can connect with. If we see them fighting for something that we can get behind and fight for, now we want to see them win. We want to see them succeed. And then every step of the way until the very end, when hopefully they achieve their goal, or if they don't, depending on what type of book you're writing, they have some other satisfying resolution. If it isn't achieved, they realize maybe it wasn't the right thing after all, and they have a new goal. So something resolves at the end. But conflict can simply mean I really want this end goal and I can't get to it. And you determine what's keeping them from it. And ideally, your character has something that will help them achieve that goal in the long run. It could be something that they have to rediscover about themselves, something that they lost along the way that they regain. There are all kinds of ways to make this very emotional for your readers. But don't confuse things happen, that don't confuse little mundane things happening as, no, I have conflict. I have stuff going on. If it's not contributing to your story or your plot, it really isn't conflict. If it's want to make a cake and oh my gosh, I ran out of eggs and I forgot and I have to go to the store and get egg. That's not conflict. No. That's not tension. That's just mundane, what we all go through every single day. And that's not going to help serve your story.
No, but if the eggs were missing and nobody knew why,
I was going to say if the grocery store
that would create a mystery
while you're there.
And if you need, exactly. So if that's exactly, you would need to include something pertaining to the story. That is how that works. Yeah. You open the door and come to the eggs I just bought. Now we've got something interesting. Or you drive to the store, like Jesse said, and there's a dead body in front of the eggs or whatever. I don't know. There could be.
Now I'm interested.
Or the carton of eggs is a portal to another universe. Whoa. I don't know. So, there should be a reason why.
But there are no billionaires there. So,
they've all been murdered.
Sure.
Thank you, Lara. That was terrific. And I appreciate you taking the plunge and launching Craft Corner.
My pleasure.
Now,
to talk about craft.
Yeah. Now let's talk to Robert Dugoni. Robert Dugoni, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Bill. Thanks for having me. Hi, Laura. Nice to see you.
Okay, you know the usual first question. If you could offer writers one piece of advice today, because maybe your opinion has changed since last year when you were on the podcast, but if you could offer writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think the advice would be to put your butt in a chair and go to work every day. Don't consider it a hobby. If it's not a hobby for you, if you want it to be a career, then make it a career. Because readers can be fickle, and if you're putting out a book every couple of years and you don't have an established following, it's going to make it more and more difficult to get an established following. So, my advice is to put your butt in the chair and go to work every day.
Good advice. As many times as we've talked, I don't think I've ever asked you, how did you get interested in writing? How did this begin for you?
I was a bit of a shit in grammar school. I had an older sibling.
This is already not the usual answer to this question, so yeah. I'm liking it already.
So I kind of thought, I was the little tough guy at school, and got in a lot of trouble. I had some friends. They actually split our class up and all kinds of stuff. But in or about the sixth grade, had a beautiful nun by the name of Sister Mary Williams. She was older, and she liked boys, which was unusual because most nuns liked the girls in the class and didn't like the boys because we were the troublemakers. Right. But she called my mother in and she said, he's a good boy, but I think he's bored. I think we needed to give him something more to do. So my mom, before she started having 10 children, had been an English teacher. And she had all these books at home that she started to hand me to read. The Count of Monte Cristo, The Old Man and the Sea, The Great Gatsby, Of Mice and Men, To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, you name them. The Red Badge of Courage. I read them all. And I loved them. I fell in love with stories. And really from that moment forward, I wanted to do something where I could create stories, whether that was theatrically, which I did for a while in San Francisco, or whether it was actually penning stories. I also was a journalist for a long time. Wrote a lot of feature pieces, but that was really the beginning.
Wow. What impresses me most about that is at the time in your life when I was reading mostly comic books, you were reading The Great Gatsby and liking it. Yeah. I don't think I really liked it the first 3 times I read it. I had to grow into that, but you were there already. All right. I think
I started with The Count of Monte Cristo, and that's a great adventure.
Like story. 1,000 pages long, right?
Yeah. It was, but there's treasure and there's escaping from prisons and all kinds of stuff. So it was great.
Very impressive. And somehow this interest in books turned into writing, not just the things you mentioned, but of course, many novels. How many novels now so far?
But I think by the end of the year, I'll have almost 30.
Yeah. Good. I was going to guess 20 something. And so I'm glad I didn't.
No, it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay. And we're talking about numerous books that have been New York Times bestsellers, the Tracy Crosswaite police procedurals. You've written spy novels. I think the first time you're on the podcast, you were talking about your literary Vietnam novel, The World Played Chess.
Correct. And
now you've got a legal thriller series. The first volume came out last year, Her Deadly Game, got smash reviews, including, I have to point out, I saw this morning, a great endorsement from Lisa Gardner, who was the keynote at WriterCon the year after you were. She was last year's keynote, endorsing the year before. And anyway, great reviews from all over the place. That must have felt good, seeing your new book and new series greeted with such a positive response, yeah?
Oh, always. I think, you know how it is, Bill. I mean, you always have a little bit of doubt. You think you wrote a good book. You think you wrote a strong book, but you just, you never know how it's going to be received. And the World Play, Her Deadly Game was just received so favorably. I think we're over 25,000, maybe 30,000 reviews on Amazon and Goodreads and all that stuff. Wow. So, a lot of people really, really found it. And for me, it was great fun to write. It was great to get back to writing a legal thriller, but it's got a little bit of a different twist on it, which I which I did on purpose. You know, when my editor, Gracie Doyle at Thomas and Mercer, said, you know, we'd like you to consider doing another legal thriller series, which is how I started with the David Sloan series. I said I would do it, but I wanted to do it in my way. I didn't want it to be just a strict courtroom novel. I wanted it to have police procedural, and I wanted it to have family dynamics. And so I created this family law firm, and they're all dysfunctional. Everybody in the law firm is dysfunctional. And you know, readers really seemed to pick up on it. So I was really pleased.
Fantastic.
That new character is Keera, right? Keera Duggan?
Keera Duggan. Her real name is spelled Ciara, Irish name. But she began to spell it as it sounds because so many people would screw it up.
Right.
I understand that. I get a lot of that with Lara, actually.
Yeah. Your name is spelled different than the usual Laura, isn't it?
Yep. I'm named after Dr. Zhivago character, which I thoroughly appreciate. I'm so happy my mom gave me a literary name before she even knew.
So you also come from a literary family, it sounds like.
You might think that, but no. I think that she liked the movie.
My wife spells her name Christina a little differently. She spells it CR, not CH.
Oh yeah.
And I forget why that is, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, tell us about.
I named my kids Catherine and Joe, so there was no difference.
Real names. I felt the same way.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about Beyond a Reasonable Doubt? And where did you get the idea of having the series character represent a childhood frenemy?
So really, I kind of started with an idea. I wanted to have Keera represent a person that was taking advantage of people's medical needs, medical issues, right? There's been a lot in the news about, you know, companies like Bitcoin and all that, where they basically it's fake it until you make it type of strategy. And I thought, you know, that would really be sort of the epitome of horror when it was something that could medically help people. So I have a very good friend who I refer to as Dr. Dan, and I golf with Dr. Dan. Dan's had Parkinson's for 17 years. And he's still out there, you know, he's still going forward. He's a really knowledgeable man. He is a doctor. And I said, you know, I told him my idea and I said, you got any thoughts? And he's very up on the topic. And he told me that there was research being done in which it's called tissue nanotransfection, which is where they can take skin cells and through an electrical charge, and I don't know the whole thing, but through an electrical charge through the nucleus, they can change the nature of the skin cells. And right now, what they've been able to do is apply an electrical charge that will help wounds heal more quickly. But they're hoping that eventually they'll be able to change the cell to, say, cells that deliver dopamine, which is what Parkinson's patients need, or cells that will help people with Alzheimer's. Cells that will regenerate tissue and stuff when people have heart disease. So almost a way of treating people without invasive surgery. Now it's a ways off, but it was the kind of idea that for me was just what I wanted. I could make it, you know, this person that started this company could make it sound that they're on the cusp of this. So this woman is the CEO of this company. She's young, she's beautiful, she's magnetic, she's charismatic, and you know, she gets all these people to invest because she believes. Well, 5 years earlier, her chief scientist, who was going to blow the whistle that the company was not where she said it was, ends up dead, and she's defended by Patsy Duggan, Keira's father, who gets her off. Now, 5 years later, her lover, who is also the CFO of the company, is found shot to death. And she's again suspected of killing him. And this time, because Patsy is retired from trying cases, Keira has to step forward and defend her. The problem is Keira knows her probably all too well because she grew up with her, went to school with her, and has always considered her to be a sociopath, if not a psychopath.
And the nice thing about that is that it makes it, it's not just Perry Mason's case of the week. It's an attorney who has a vested interest and a real connection to the client. Right. Which I think makes a great story.
And so, is she going to free a guilty person? Is she going to, fail to free an innocent person? I mean, this woman, Jenna is her name. Jenna Bernstein is an adept liar. And so it's very hard for Keera to get a read on whether she's being told the truth or not. And remember, Keera is really good at reading people because she's a chess prodigy. She spent her life playing competitive chess across the table from opponents and could tell when they were bluffing, when they were nervous, when they had failed to consider what she was doing. But she has trouble reading Jenna because she's a sociopath.
Okay, here I have to intervene. Lara, I know you have a question already, but I don't know if you know this or not, Bob, but when you were at WriterCon, you were a keynote, you were not only the keynote, you were also the solution to Final Jeopardy, WriterCon Jeopardy that year. Final Jeopardy had all to do with knowing what game is mentioned in the title of what was then, I think, your most recent book. Yeah. But the winning team knew the answer. So there you go.
Right.
Chess is important to your work.
Well, what does a typical writing day look like for you? What's your process like?
So I try to work out 6 days a week. My son gave me a book probably about 5 years ago called Younger Next Year. And it's about how to slow the aging process, if you will, how to maintain health. And that really comes down to, I won't bore you all with it, but just, working out 6 days a week. So, some of those mornings I get up early and I go to a workout class with my wife from like 6:30 to 7:30. I come home, have a little breakfast, I'm at my desk. And I'm at my desk until late in the afternoon, depending on what I have to get done. But usually it's late in the afternoon. In the summers here in Seattle, it's beautiful because the sun is up until 9 o'clock at night and I can sneak out at 6 and go play 18 holes of golf. In the winter, it gets dark early. So if I want to get out to the driving range or play some holes, I got to cut off a little bit earlier. Today would be 4:30. But, I was at my desk this morning at 6 a.m. because this is my morning to do Pilates at 10. So, I think the bottom line is I think it's very important for writers to get the endorphins going, whether that's through exercise or, going for a run, whatever it is that gets your endorphins going before you sit down, so that when you sit down, you're sort of energized and charged and you can dig right into whatever you have to do. My writing this morning is I have a to-do list. I have some social media questions I have to answer. I have some questions I have to answer for an interview. This was on my agenda. And so when I sat down this morning, I started on editing my latest book, which I'm about to turn in, which is the third book in the Keera Duggan series, which is called Her Cold Justice. So that's where my focus has been until I took Pilates from 9 to 10, and now I'm speaking to you all. But I think my point, Laura, is I don't treat this as a hobby. I love it, and I love what I do, but it's a job for me. And I've always been very self-motivated. I tell people I have one shitty employee that I have to deal with, and that's me. But it's work. I go to work every day.
Right.
Well, you mentioned that you live in Seattle, and this book is set in Seattle as well. Did you do that for a reason? Was that what did you have? Yeah. Was it convenience or something else?
A lot of it is convenience. A lot of it is being able to write knowledgeably about the setting that the characters live in, so that people don't pick it up and go, whoa, wait a minute. That doesn't happen in Seattle. Yeah. That doesn't happen in Oklahoma City. I mean, we don't have those things. I want the setting to be as real as possible that the characters are living in. So that readers perceive it as a true story. I think one of the best compliments that any writer can get is when someone finishes your book and emails you and says, was this true? Was this a true event? Is this based on a true story? And I get that quite a bit. So that's kind of fun.
It means it seems real to them. I have a question I wanted to ask about this new series and the new book, Beyond Reasonable Doubt. That's maybe one of those deep rabbit holes that only interest me, but why a female protagonist? When I first started writing in the 90s, I used to hear people complain, oh, men shouldn't write female protagonists. They don't know anything, which I obviously didn't listen to since I've done it many times. Yeah. But I'm curious why you made that decision.
Yeah, Bill, I run into the same thing. And I always say the same thing is I don't try to write from the perspective of a woman. I try to write from the perspective of a character who has skeletons in her closet that she's trying to deal with, which is a universal trait that is not dependent upon gender at all. And so, yes, there are nuances that make men and women different. But I think the more that writers try to highlight that, the more ridiculous it sounds, because I think inside we all have the same core values that we want. We want a good family, a good house, a safe place to live, a good job. We can make money, to be treated with respect and honor. All those things are sort of a universal trait. Now, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that there was also a business decision for it. And one of those business decisions is, a large percentage of readers out there are women. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, women, I think, were underrepresented in the thriller world. Thrillers were all about, men, racing across the world to save the planet, and James Bond and Jack Reacher and, all those guys. And, I wanted to create a character that was female, that could do all those same things, but maybe do it a little bit more intuitively. People have often talked to me and asked, they'll say things like, do you think we'll ever have a female president? And I'll say, I hope so someday, because, I think that their women have qualities that could really benefit, that men don't necessarily have, So my decision with Tracy Crosswhite and with Keera Duggan was based upon growing up with four sisters, all of whom are professional, working in a profession as a lawyer for 15 years with a lot of very competent, successful female lawyers. And then also taking into consideration some of the things I learned along the way. Like, here's something I never thought about. And I remember when I was trying a case with a woman, a female lawyer, and she just looked really frazzled. And I went in and said, what can I help you with? And she looked at me and she said, I just don't know what I'm going to cook my family for dinner tonight. I mean, I'll always remember that because it was completely and totally foreign to me. But right. that was a real concern for her. Now, did she not have a husband that would do it? I don't know. But it was definitely something that made me stop and ponder. So I just think there's a lot of little nuances there that readers can really identify with.
Yeah, I would agree. Oh, one last question then. What's coming up next from you?
You and I were talking a little bit before we started the podcast. I'm going to have like 4 books out in 14 months. So wow. It's been really crazy this year. So after Beyond Reasonable Doubt, I have a new book coming out called Hold Strong. I actually have an arc of it. Can I go grab it real quick?
Sure, please do. Well, I'll comment on the fact that while you have a paperback version of Beyond Reasonable Doubt behind your head, I have the hardcover. I don't know what that says, but maybe your PR people like me better. I don't know.
So this is Hold Strong. It's a World War II novel, but it's a World War II story that's really never been told. It's about prisoners of war being kept in what were called Japanese hell ships and sort of transported around the Pacific Ocean. So what the two gentlemen that I wrote this with, Jeff Langholz and Chris Crabtree, did an unbelievable amount of research, 10 years of research. And I helped them put the story together. So this will be out in January. I'm really excited about it. I love the characters in it. It's got a really strong female character in it, a very strong male character as well. That'll be out in January. Then the next Tracy Crosswhite book, which is called A Deadly Draw, will be out, I believe, in April or May, followed by the third Keera Duggan book, which is called Her Cold Justice. And that's the book that I was working on before I jumped on here to talk to you. So
Her Cold Justice?
Her Cold Justice.
Ooh.
So those will be, that's what's upcoming. I have some events that I'll be doing, luncheons, things like that. But I'm sort of looking forward to the holiday season and slowing down a little bit.
Staying home more. Yeah, I get that.
More, yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, thanks once again for being a guest on the podcast. I don't know if you know it, but you're kicking off season 4 for us. So you're the big gun today. Thanks for showing up.
Well, thanks for having me. As always, you run an incredible conference out there in Oklahoma City called WriterCon. I get questions about it all the time because I have the hat.
Fantastic! I got a picture of you in that. Yeah.
And it's really a great conference. So, a plug for anyone out there that's working on their craft or wants to work on their craft. Go see Bill and Laura in Oklahoma City at WriterCon.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for being on the podcast again.
My pleasure.
Bye now. Just a few parting words. We're a ways off, of course, from future WriterCon programs. The cruise, which is going to Alaska this year, that's not till late March. You can check that out on the WriterCon website. The retreat at Canebrake, beautiful luxury resort is what I meant to say. It's in July. So that's a ways in the future, although there's information about them now on the website and you can read all about it and even register because spaces probably will fill. But in the meantime, what I was trying to say is let me remind you that WriterCon has its own newsletter. You don't want to miss that. It's free. Why would you? We've got articles on breaking issues and books, audiobooks, PR, marketing, everything. Go to Substack and search for WriterCon and sign up for that. And if you haven't joined the WriterCon Facebook group yet, please do. Again, totally free. Just go on Facebook, look for WriterCon, and join this wonderful community of writers. All right? Until next time, did you think I was going to change this for season 4? I'm not. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. So, see you next time.